Iron on Water, The Battle of Hampton Roads by Everett Gassman
and Sid Bernard.
In the Civil War era, hundreds of wooden ships would be built just to be destroyed in seconds. However, the Battle of Hampton Roads forever changed the way ships at war would battle. This is because it showed just how powerful iron ships were compared to their futile and obsolete counterpart, the wooden ship.
This battle between ironclads demonstrated how iron was impervious to giant cannonballs and full broadsides. Also, it showed how even some of the largest wooden ships were nothing compared to an average-sized metal warship.
Finally, it sparked a great time of engineering of weapons and ships, turning the tides in the way we would see war in the distant future. Without this battle, the Iron Age of warships might have been severely delayed than how it is today in the modern world. Many things led up to the Battle of Hampton Roads, but one of the first things that started our chain of events was the creation of the shell gun, which was created by Henry Joseph Pagson. Angry with his failure within his own navy, he realized he needed to create a cannon that was able to destroy wooden ship walls.
He decided to engineer shells that would explode a second time, which would make wooden ships a mess. This is because the shell would break through the ship and explode as shrapnel inside of the ship. Because wooden ships were now easily destroyed, the idea of creating metal ships would soon make its way.
Almost 40 years later, the Civil War had broken out. While thinking of a way to beat the Confederates, General Winfield Scott would come up with the Anaconda Plan. This plan was to constrict the South of supplies by surrounding them with ships so they could not sell cotton or other exports to Europe. The North would want to defend this blockade with a strong and powerful ship, so they would choose to create a new type of ship called an ironclad, but the South would also attempt to follow suit.
On the 10th of May, 1862, Charles Macaulay, a Union officer, would burn down the Gosport shipyard. This was because a powerful wooden ship titled the USS Merrimack was in it. In fear of the Confederates getting hold of the ship, they would set it ablaze.
However, because the large wooden ship was in the water, only the top was burned, and the entire hull could be used for the construction of a new ship. With lots of iron gained from Union Railroad tracks and the entire hull of a boat, they would create a monster of a ship newly known as the CSS Virginia. With the help of Stephen Mallory, the Secretary of the Navy for the Confederates, they would create one of, if not the strongest ship at the time. The CSS Virginia would carry 10 cannons and would often resemble a barn roof on the water.
On the other side, the North would be building an ironclad from scratch. The central engineer for this project would be John Ericsson, a Swedish engineer who had moved to America and who had previously created a cannon for the USA.
The building of the USS Monitor would take more than 100 days to create it, which was fast for that time. It would be a fast and deadly ship with a 360-degree rotating turret, and it would also have the first underwater toilet. This ship would often be described as a cheese box on water. The North would begin to evaluate the ship not long after hearing that the Virginia was going to soon attack Hampton Roads. They would send the Monitor to aid their own ships as soon as they could. In an attempt to destroy part of the North's blockade, the South would send their great ironclad to hopefully break through it. The CSS Virginia would leave port on March 8 from Portsmouth, and it would sail down the Elizabeth River and reach Hampton Roads at midday. The Virginia would begin its massacre around 2 p.m. by taking on the USS Cumberland. The Cumberland was one of the Union's biggest wooden ships. It first functioned as a flagship, but was later used in the Anaconda Plan and was successful in catching smugglers with many resources. The Virginia would begin by charging at the Cumberland at its full speed. Even though they had many guns, every shot the Union troops fired sprang off like peas. The Virginia, at a high speed, thrusted into the Cumberland with its giant ram. the gaping hole let too much water in, and the Cumberland had sunk. The Virginia's next target would be the USS Congress, another large wooden ship. Though the Congress was able to evade the Virginia's ram, it could not stop the constant firing of shells. It was left stranded and would slowly burn into the sea.
Amid the fighting, a ship, known as the USS Minnesota, would also attempt to lay an attack on the beast. However, just like the other wooden ships, it would be beat, but due to low fuel, the Virginia would leave it stranded so it could finish it off the next morning.
The Virginia had proved its point. It had defeated 3 powerful ships within one afternoon. For now, it would take a break to refuel and fix its damages. But another ship would arrive later that night, known only as the USS Monitor. On March 9th, the long-awaited battle would take place. Early that morning, the Virginia, fully fueled and ready for battle, would come to finish the Minnesota. But something else was in its way. For the first time, 2 metal ships would be facing each other. Quickly, both fired, and round 2 had begun.
The Virginia was a strong, bulky ship, but it had its drawbacks. It could not go very fast, so the smaller, faster Monitor could wrap around it in circles, which it did. Shot after shot, both had endured so many blasts, but still hardly any damage was done to the impenetrable metal.
Cannonballs were flying left and right, but the iron was too strong. Nothing was changing. Both needed fuel, and so their battle had ended. For nearly 4 hours, the ships had fought, and it had ended in a draw, for they were both too durable for each other. After 2 days, the Battle of Hampton Roads had concluded.
The Battle of Hampton Roads ended with a draw. However, in both sides' minds, they had completed their goals. The Virginia had sunk 3 large wooden ships and some other minor ones, and the Monitor successfully prevented the Virginia from harming any more ships.
However, the Monitor also helped them gain control of the Hampton Roads area. This would help the Union, slowly but surely, drain the South of money, and would eventually help the North beat the South in the Civil War.
The Battle of Hampton Roads would have a significant impact upon society because it was the first ever battle between ironclads, and further it would show just how powerful iron ships were in combat compared to wooden ships.
After the battle had ended, it had already sparked fresh ideas for hundreds or even thousands of engineers in the world. Just the possibility of building with ships with iron was not very new, but using them as war vessels would change the way things would work entirely.
New ships with iron plating all around the world would be made, but new weaponry would also need to be made if the ships wanted to sink each other. Though many great achievements have been made within the naval scene, none compared to the first great battle of ironclads, the Battle of Hampton Roads. Ultimately, the Battle of Hampton Roads was so impactful to the naval scene that it changed the entire Navy for what it is today. Cannonballs were now useless to use against ironclads, bouncing off them like they were made of rubber.
Also, it proved how one ironclad could destroy multiple large modern wooden warships at the time. And finally, it inspired many and created a time of engineering in which ships would change for the better. The Battle of Hampton Roads would be a turning point in history because it was a marvel in engineering for both sides and proved that iron was far more superior than wood. This marvelous battle between ships brought creation to a new and stronger time for ships all around the world.